Okay.
It's right by where they play, right?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Easy walking.
Yeah, okay, I know where you're talking about. Yeah, well, that must be a madhouse.
It's, I mean, the streets are all
Must have realized I
I've never jumped from. Always taken a lot of fireworks.
Falls Board of Education meeting includes the cooperative sharing agreement with Valley Lutheran, Iowa State University clinical placement agreement, the robotics building lease agreement, and the Cedar Falls Health Trust Fund grant application. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions?
I just had a quick question on the Valley Lutheran one. Is that just a renewal of a structure that was already in place?
We have an agreement already in place for the high school. This actually is a junior high request, which we have not had in the past. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Public comment.
We have not had anybody contact us for public comment.
Okay. Thank you. The Secretary's financial report.
Okay, thank you. If you would open up your file, or you can look on the screen, and we'll go to the financial report for September 30th. And I'll remind the board, as always, that these financial reports are a cash report. There are no accruals in this report. For the month of September, you'll see in the general fund, which includes general management fund in River Hills Consortium, total revenue of $3,658,931. We did receive our first state aid payment for this school year in September. And in expenditures, we had $4,165,578 with a total fund balance as of the end of September of $6,114,776. And you can see where the cash is in the checking account, where the investments are, and you can also see the comparison to where we were at this time 1 year ago. The next graphs then kind of basically show you cash flow. We typically track our cash flow from month to month, and that's included in the board report. Our cash flow is running about $1 million under where we were at this time a year ago, but we are ahead of where we were in fiscal 13 and fiscal 14. And in the management fund, we're running about steady, and that is a planned drawdown. We've talked about that over and over. We're slowly drawing that fund balance down. In the statewide 1 cent local option sales tax, receipts of $381,345. No expenditures, but we did have our monthly transfer to the debt service fund for our revenue bond debt payments of the $582,673 for a fund balance then of $8,076,952 in rounding. You can see where the investments are and where the cash is, and as always, I will remind the board that the $1.835 million and the $995 are designated reserved funds for as required by the sale of our bonds. Physical plant and equipment levy, $9,130 this month on the revenue side, $416,916 on expenses as we were wrapping up summer projects for a fund balance of $1,347,639 rounded. Debt service, you can see there's the transfer in of the $252,673 from the statewide 1 cent sales tax, plus a little interest that we earned on that for a total of $759,570 rounded. No expenditures. You will not see any expenditures in that fund until December, when our first payment is due for the year. Student activity revenue of $115,876, expenditures of $197,807, with a fund balance of $600,580 rounded. Enterprise funds, food service, revenue of $154,419, expenditures of $191,775. I would anticipate that revenue would increase a little bit in October, as we have yet to receive any reimbursements from the federal or state level for meals that typically starts in October. So you can see our fund balance of $458,604, and the student coffee fund it had a revenue of $1,620, expenditures of $1,068, and their balance is $7,120 rounded. And with that, I would entertain any questions the board might have.
Doug, going back to the SAVE fund just for a second. So you pointed out
funds that are not available due to bond covenants.
Correct.
And I know there's also state requirements, right, as far as a reserve that we need to maintain on that
Correct.
as well. Do those marry up, or our state requirements are higher than that or lower than that?
No, we're meeting everybody's requirement with that, so. we're
Okay.
good.
So roughly 2.8
You have to take
million.
2.8 off of it.
2.8 is our restricted funds,
Correct.
and the remaining 6.2 is funds that we haven't put towards any purpose
That'd
at
be
this
correct.
moment.
5.2.
For 5.2.
Yeah, that would be correct. At this
Okay.
point, we do not have any, other than any additional planning that might take place for any future projects. There's nothing planned for that. If the district does need to move forward with additional portable classroom space, it'll be this fund that'll have to cover those expenses.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
You bet.
If you recall, we had $3 million out of this fund to buy down the last bond as well. There was $38 million of cost. We anticipated, or at least asked the question for $35 million, so that's where the extra $3 million was coming out of as well.
Any other questions? If not, financial report will be placed on file for audit. Communications, you are Mr. Marcus here.
Yeah, excited to have Michael Flancher back again for our board member reports, and again, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Last week, the 2015 Northeast Iowa Student Food Drive kicked off. So it's about a 6-week event, and it's a competition between area schools. Last year, we raised 18,000 pounds of food. Cedar Falls did, and our goal is to raise 22,000 this year. So I think that's a reasonable goal, and we've planned a number of different fundraisers and events to achieve that. Every Friday in October in the Tiger's Den, our student lounge where the coffee shop is, we will be having a bake sale each Friday, and those proceeds will go to our student food drive total. We will also be holding a dance for the first time this year, and the cost of admission will go toward the food drive. And as well, on October 29th, our trunk or treat event in the staff parking lot, where students and teachers will decorate their trunks, and elementary kids can come and trunk or treat and get candy in a safe way. And then also the cost of admission will be 1 or 2 cans, and those will go toward our total. A couple weeks ago was our Do Better Be Better 5K run, Mrs. Smith's scholarship. I wasn't able to obtain an exact dollar amount on that, but we do know it was over $1,000. So that money will be going toward a scholarship for a senior at the end of the school year. Last week at the high school was college application week, so set it up by our counselors. We had different reps from around Iowa, college reps, helping students fill out college applications, encouraging that process, and just answering any questions they may have. This past Saturday was the marching band state competition, and our marching band received all Division I ratings again this year. For many years we've gotten that honor. We have a great marching band, and they proved that again. In football, we have a 5-2 record. Last week we did lose at Linmar, but this Friday we will be having meeting up with Cedar Rapids Kennedy at Kennedy. And then last week there was a cross-country super meet. Men's cross-country placed first in that, and as well women's cross-country received second place. So great week to be a Tiger. Any questions?
Great.
I want to know where to get your shirt.
These are last year. These are student Senate
These are
shirts,
awesome.
and we're in the works of getting new ones for this year. So they're pretty cool. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite ones.
Yeah.
And you set your goal for 18,000 this year?
22.
22.
It was 8.
Last year was 18.
Okay.
We're kind of the defending champs, aren't we? Like
We are
4 years
for
running or something like this.
a while. So we
What
keep that
what
up.
other schools take part?
Waterloo East, West, Valley Lutheran, Hudson, Union,
Okay.
I believe.
Columbus and
Waterloo Christian
Christian.
as well. Yep.
Okay. Good cause.
It is.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Next, we have the approval for the substantial completion of the Orchard Hill portable relocation.
I guess that would be me.
Okay.
Every year when we have constructions complete, we have the board approve the completion of those construction projects. What we have in front of you to begin with is yes, it is the 2014 Orchard Hill portable relocation project. Let's just say it took a little while to get the paperwork done, and we'll leave it at that. But simply put, our original budget for that project, as you can see, was $233,490, and our total project with expenses and everything ended up being $207,141. So we came in $26,349 on our budget, and we would recommend acceptance of that project.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education accept as complete the 2014 Orchard Hill Elementary Portable Relocation Project for all claims, materials furnished, labor performed, and service on this contract must be filed within the next 30 days.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Second by Jim. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Doug, do you want to continue with the North Cedar project?
I'd be honored to. I can get my fingers to work here. Okay, next is the North Cedar 2015 classroom remodeling project. That project, the board approved that, awarded that contract in the budget to Peters Construction back in December. The total budget amount was $753,718. That includes the original contract awarded by the board, a contingency budget, professional design budget, and some other miscellaneous expenditures. Primarily in this case, it was furniture and asbestos. So the actual net cost to complete the project ended up being $669,003 with a total savings of $84,715. What we did on this project, which sort of balloons that savings up, is there was an allowance within the general construction contract for some unforeseen events. When we do remodeling projects, we tend to build a little bit of an allowance into that for miscellaneous items, and then we also build a contingency budget on top of that. So if I'm being a little ultra conservative maybe, but the main part of it is we did come in $84,700 under budget. And we're very happy with the work that Peters did. They did the work both last in 2014 and 2015 for the work out there, and we would recommend acceptance of the project.
And as a board and as a district, I think we'd rather be $84,000 under budget than $84,000 over budget. So being a little conservative on some of those estimates is not a bad thing. So.
You never know what you're going to get in remodeling until you open it up. And we've done a lot of remodeling in this district in my time here, and experience is a good teacher.
Is this the project that put air conditioners in the room?
This project remodeled 6 classrooms at North Cedar.
Okay.
So and then they were completely redone. The classrooms were stripped to the walls, new windows, new flooring, new millwork, upgraded air conditioning. It's all tied into our HVAC computerized management system. So new flooring.
And does that complete that hallway?
Yes, that what I would call the entire.
Looks great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion for approval?
Yes, I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education accept as complete the 2015 North Cedar Elementary Classroom Remodeling Project, Phase 2. All claims for materials furnished, labor provided, and/or services provided on this contract must be filed within the next 30 days.
Thank you, Jeff. Second?
Second.
Second by Doug. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Doug, let's continue with Southdale.
Okay, next is the Southdale Phase 2 remodeling project. Original contract was awarded to Peters Construction back in November at $538,538, and then with contingency budget, professional design fees, and other miscellaneous, the miscellaneous primarily being asbestos again, Total budget was $665,510. You can see on the sheet that we actually finished the project at $580,281, or a savings under budget of $85,229. Real similar scenario here is what was with North Cedar. We do ask within the bid, we ask the contractors to bid an allowance for miscellaneous items that they might uncover during the remodeling, and then we put an additional contingency on top of that. You can note that the asbestos did cost us a little bit more than what we originally anticipated. It is amazing when you open up walls and you find things. But by and large, again, we were able to complete that work. Again, it was the same process as what we did at North Cedar. We completely took 4 classrooms, stripped them down to the walls, new windows. We completely gutted and rebuilt 2 restrooms for the first graders in that wing. New flooring, new projection systems, new millwork. We have a little bit of work left to do at Southdale. You'll see that information come to you hopefully in December, if not December, January. And then the intent would be that after the end of next summer, that building will have been completely remodeled. All the classrooms then will be air conditioned. And for one summer, maybe I cannot worry about having any work at Southdale. There's a rolling joke in our office that this is my 9th year, and this is the 9th Southdale project that I've had to manage. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion for approval of the Southdale project?
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education accept as complete the 2015 Southdale Elementary Classroom Remodeling Project Phase 2. All claims for materials furnished, labor performed, and/or services provided on this contract must be filed within the next 30 days.
Thank you, Doug. Did I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Susan. Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Petit, would you tell us about the legislative advocate designee?
Yep, for ISAB, we need to select our legislative advocate, the designee, for their annual conference. This person is the board member that will receive all the information, the packet of information. All board members are still eligible to attend the meeting, and certainly we encourage you to attend unless there's other meetings that you have assigned. But certainly you would open up for anybody who wishes to be the actual designee from the Cedar Falls School District.
Okay. Would one of you like to do that?
I'll be glad,
Not
to,
a tough
I'll be glad to
job.
do it.
You
if
just get
nobody
all
else
the
wants
you
to.
just get the packet. We'll
you just hold the card up. That's what you do.
It's a great resume builder.
Oh, it
Yes,
is. It is.
Jeff, would you do that this year?
It's real easy, Jeff.
Sure.
I'm
If I
going-
can do it. I feel
Very good.
I'm
Thank
going
you.
to delegate assembly,
All right.
so
We'll be there to support you. Okay. I don't think that needs a motion, does it?
Yes.
Actually, it does. Yeah.
Oh.
So,
I move that Jeff Hassman is the designee for the delegate assembly.
In a second. Thank you, Susan.
second.
Second by Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And then we have a list for the SIAC committee members.
Yeah, it's simply part of the Iowa Code requirement that annually we approve the School Improvement Advisory Committee members. Within your packet, you'll see a list of members made up of parents, teachers, students, administrators that certainly take part in 3 to 4 meetings annually that looks at some of our student achievement data and information, and at the end of the year they will review our goals and make recommendations to the school board based on our 3 goal areas that we set annually. So it's one of those components that we certainly recommend this list. I see that there is one change on this. Joyce Coyle, board member, would be Joyce Coyle, community member.
And I think Jamie Becker graduated, didn't she?
She might have. Let me double check that. I know.
She did.
Yeah, because
did.
you handed her a diploma.
But is there any, I mean, I don't know if she'd be willing to still serve. Is there a
She
reason
might,
not
yeah.
to have a recent graduate on it?
Not at
Yeah,
all, no. We were going to check on that, so I'll double check to make sure. But no, it would be great to have a recent graduate on there because I think that'd be a great representation. And our other, I know students are certainly still students, looking at their dates and their emails. So, yes,
She attends you and I. so
we'll double check with
Yeah, she's
Jane.
right, yeah, she's right
Be
here.
great.
Yeah, that'd be great if she can
Sure.
attend, because I think that'd be a great representation, and certainly she'd have a great perspective.
Yeah.
And are there any new names on this list?
There are. We had to replace a few people that we reached out to, but offhand I can't recall from last year to this year which ones those are. So I do apologize about that.
Do I hear a motion that we accept the committee members for the SIAC committee?
Should there be another board member since there's now only one instead of two?
We're going
Yeah,
We'll get into that.
Get
we'll
that in a
get
second.
that when we get
Yeah,
to our
yeah.
committees. Yeah.
to. Thank you, Jim.
I move that we accept the list provided for the SIAC.
Great. Thank you, Susan. A second?
Second.
We'll give it to Jeff. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And we're moved then to some work on the Board of Education goals update. Andy, would you start us off on that?
Sure. Within your packet is last year's kind of summary of the Board of Education goals that we worked on, and we set those up into the 3 goal areas that the district really sets our goals to maximize our direction and where we're moving. Goal number 1 is always the student achievement, student learning. Goal number 2 is culture and climate. Goal number 3 is the PLC process. Last year we worked on each of these subset goal areas. You can see different bulleted items underneath each of those goal areas. I think the intent or the hope, I think what we've done in the past is we typically have a small group of board members that meet, help look and review goals, and then brings those back as a recommendation for the full board. I think it's an opportunity really to talk, to find out if anybody has any specific interest or items that you'd like to focus on, but also members of that subcommittee.
The very first one that was brought to my attention on the district tech plans, and I'm sure that there are continued updates, but we've got our execution has been significant in the last 2 years. I don't know if there needs to be a revision of that or added to that.
I would advocate scrapping it. I don't think it's at the board goal level anymore. I still want to receive the reports like we do for other things.
Yeah. And what's nice is we have board members that are on that committee and certainly can provide some updates as well. But typically, especially at a retreat in January, we typically have a technology update, and then usually one other time per year we'll have a technology update. It's always good to know where we're at and what we're working on.
So as far as a board goal, though, I would consider this achieved booyah and take it off.
I think a small committee is a good idea to get
Okay.
together and discuss it.
I
I
think-
hope the committee continues though with, or whoever's on it, we recommend that we continue with our visiting the parent organizations
Okay.
and being involved with the PLC process. I
I
think
agree
that's
with you, Susan.
real
Okay.
beneficial to all of us.
They really appreciate that.
Would you be willing to serve in the subcommittee?
Sure.
Looking down. And Jenny and Doug?
If you will.
Perfect. Okay.
But you started going this way, so you good? So it's just
There's another opportunity. There's another opportunity coming.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'll do either one, Jim, so I mean.
Okay. Do you need to discuss, would we like to discuss any of these specific while we have them in front of us?
If we are going to continue to do the visitation stuff, that was the actual maintaining the Google spreadsheet and all. Joyce used to do that, and I'd volunteer to do that.
Okay, great.
Yay.
So if we decide to do it, I will volunteer
Great.
to.
Then I won't have
do
to
that.
do the other one either. Yes.
You know, I'd work with you then to set up the dates in those different
I would really hope you would.
locations. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And if you could, if we could meet before our next meeting and have these, we can then go ahead and have our school settings started to.
Send out a doodle.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't be back until about Thursday next week.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
And just as we look, we didn't really dive too deeply into our goal 2 in looking at some of our character education programs. So I do think, if we continue with that as a goal, which I think we should, we probably need to make that more of a deliberative
Okay.
effort.
Very good.
To know,
Okay.
Good.
Any other suggestions? Okay, thank you very much. You also had in your packet the board committee assignments, and there are several open, and I don't know, did it come up? Yes, in the yellow on your committee assignments. Doug is asked to be on the facilities committee, so that would fill that slot. And
Again, unless someone else wants to.
and for Jeff and Susie, if you've got questions on what each one of these committees do, and I think that would be valid to explain to you.
I have a quick question. I don't know if it's for Andy or Dan. For the two core curriculum committees, are they still active? Have we kind of fulfilled the goals of that, or?
Yeah, we really have not really met with the Iowa Core leadership team for several years now, since we've gotten into the PLC process and have already dug deeply into the Iowa Core, so that's probably one we don't need to maintain.
So we could drop that committee?
Which I don't believe we're required by the
Okay.
state to have that committee.
We are not. Second from the bottom.
Okay.
And it's actually third and second. Is the 21st Century Skills Committee still meeting for the Iowa Core, or are those two both ones that we can?
We still may meet with that committee. It'd probably be good to at least have that as there, whether it'll meet yet or not, I don't know.
And you can leave me on, I mean, considering I've been on the core curriculum one from the beginning, that even precedes me as a board member. I mean, if you want to leave it on there, that's fine. I just wondered if they were both active or not.
It might not be bad to leave it on the books, especially it may be coming back as an active committee just with some of the new science standards, some of the other components. So it's one of those that there are some changes afoot, especially at the federal government with the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, No Child Left Behind, and that could make some, or potentially create some changes and some challenges that we need to look at as a district with those committees.
Any other things that would be interesting to you?
Well, I don't want to take anything away from Doug, but given the facility challenges that we have, but I see some of the committees have 3 people on them. Put 3 on that committee. I think that's a pretty important topic that we have before us.
I have no problem.
No, I don't have an issue with that. We just have to make sure that we truly engage our community on that one as well, because that's I think the process that's always been used. So no, there's not an issue with that at all. But it's always been kind of that community-focused committee. So we really want to make sure we, don't have so many board members on there.
How about if I step off of that and put Jeff on that?
I think that'd be tremendous.
Great.
I think sometimes if you have 3 board members, it can, especially if you only have 14 people that are there, you almost have 15% of your attendees are board members, and you just want to be cautious with that. So, especially with that being that community focus and listen to our community members. I think total we have about 25 to 28 individuals that are on that committee, but you never get the full amount there at those meetings. So, yeah, that'd be good.
I would move up to the SIAC committee if anyone, no one really is interested in that. Okay.
And I will do the Career and Technical Education Advisory.
Okay. Susie Hines.
Will you send out an updated list?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we have one more for the District Tech Committee.
And that one meets during the day. The other ones typically always meet late afternoon or in the evening, but that one will meet during the day.
Do we, the Wellness Committee, does that need 3 of us on it?
Not necessarily.
I will go off that Wellness then and do the District Tech if that's, because I'm available during the day. Is that okay?
Sounds good, Jim.
Okay.
In fact, with the PEP grant over at the end of this year, I don't know what the focus of the Wellness Committee will be after this.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll be good with that.
So I think that fills those all, and if you have any desire to switch, let us know soon, because So we're all in ink.
I just want to verify real quick if that's okay. So
I was just going to ask.
I
And I think we're still missing one.
keep it. So
Thank you, Jenny, for clarifying that. Good.
Just to verify, legislative network stays the same. ISCB delegate assembly obviously will be Jeff. Career and Tech will be Jim and Susie. School SIAC will be Jim and Susan. Conference Board Susan. Facility Committee Doug and Jeff. Foundation Susan. Wellness Committee Susan and Jenny. Policy Review will stay the same. Leadership Iowa Core will stay the same. 21st Century Skills Committee will be Susie. And District Technology will be Jenny and Jim.
And I want to clarify too with the foundation. Susie is on the foundation board, but she's going to remain a community member. So even though I don't think we should list her here, but because in our bylaws we only have one board member that's a board member representative, but we can have her be a community representative. Otherwise, I volunteered to step down from that. But our foundation board discussed it and said they thought it would be all right.
Yep, the foundation board
Susie
can make that
named it. So she's
decision.
actually still on another committee. It's just not listed here. Okay.
Okay. These are all committees that are suggested and required, or not?
No, well, suggested, some required, some suggested. Obviously, we don't have to have like a technology committee.
Right.
We do not need to have
Okay.
some of these other committees. But I think they're in best, what's best for our district, and certainly to have that board representation is tremendous.
Great.
And maybe this just ties into our goals. Is World Language Committee one that would rise to this? Because we did have representatives on that.
Yeah.
Not that
We've
I don't
never
know.
listed that. That's a good point. We always had a board member on that committee. It's a great question.
It's kind of an ad hoc committee, so.
It's ad hoc.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
maybe
sure.
once it meets, we just need to, because was it just Dave or Jim? Were you on that as well with Dave?
I was not.
Just Dave.
Just Dave. So it'd be nice to have someone sit on that once you start to meet with them again. But
Right, we have a meeting, we just set a meeting today after a few different times attempting to do that. So that's something certainly we could have somebody sit on if somebody so chooses, or we can continue to just update the board and bring that committee to the board to provide those updates as necessary. It's up to the board.
I mean, I'm not overly qualified to teach it, but I know how to learn languages, so.
great.
Be good.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good suggestion. But in being an ad hoc, eventually that will not be
It'll
a
go away.
continuation. Okay.
Yeah, more than likely.
Okay. Do these take a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I move that we approve the board committee assignments as amended at this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion of committee assignments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then we get into a great report from Doug on the certified annual budget, CAR.
Everything you wanted to know, but we're afraid to ask. I'm gonna kill the light here, for everybody. Every year, the school districts across the state and the AEAs are required to report end-of-year financial activities for the previous school year. And basically, that's called the Certified Annual Report. As you can see, which reports due September 15th of every year. It also includes detailed information about a special education supplement for children with special needs. And the Iowa Department of Education requires that all school districts across the state use their Uniform Financial Accounting Code for the proper expenditures and coding of revenue and expenditures within the school district. And I think you have a copy of that in your packet. This year that report was 60 pages in length. Kind of go through a little bit of summary. When you look at the report, you'll see it'll say general fund, but in Cedar Falls, general fund means those Fund 10 as well as funds 12, 13, 14, and 16. And so we break those out to provide more detail for us internally so that we can track revenue and expenditures. But that's but it all is reported to the department as Fund 10. And then we've got our student activity management, district supported trust funds, which is there's 2 small scholarships that are still in that yet. There's the statewide school infrastructure fund, Fund 33, capital fund 36, debt service, the permanent fund, which is the Christensen fund. Then of course that's an endowment. Only the interest can be used on that grant. We're not allowed by the bequest of Ms. Christensen to spend any of the principal. The enterprise fund, the student nutrition fund, and for last year was the first time that we had the high school student coffee shop fund, but they're rolled together into a 60 series fund accounting. And then we have our miscellaneous fiduciaries, of private purpose trusts. Those are a lot of miscellaneous scholarships that we may get from year to year for students graduating. And then our agency funds, the flower fund and the foundation gifts, and that flow through Fund 92. So we have a little bit of Booster Club and some PTA, PTO activity in 93. And then this year, also 94, is the River Hills Consortium. Remember, we're transitioning River Hills. The last previous 2 years, well, this will be the 3rd year, excuse me, just ending. But the previous 2 years, 100% of all the River Hills revenue expenditures were flowed through the general fund. For last school year, we made a switch midway to the year to an agency fund. The Department of Education, in their advice to us as we developed and implemented the consortium arrangement that we have with River Hills School and the other 27 school districts, I believe, that are a part of that, recommended that we move that to an agency type fund, and so we're transitioning into that. Next year, when you see this report, you will not see anything much about that other than fund balances, because we're a fiscal agent for the consortium. Okay. Technology is a wonderful thing. There we go. Just a reminder as we kind of go through this, a couple of definitions: assets are cash, receivables, and all of that. And the fund balance is the actual cash we have on hand. That's probably the best way to remember that. So in our general fund, all those funds we talked about, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 16, we ended the year with a total assets of $13.44 million, but our fund balance was at $7.1 million. Our cash in bank was $7.1 million. And you can see that those numbers are down from the previous year. Not in a situation where we're in a big issue or a problem or anything, but you can see that we've kind of dipped a little bit for this school year that just ended. Revenues and expenditures in those funds for this year, we had $52.12 million worth of revenue, but we had just over $53 million worth of expenditures for the same time period. When you take a look at the revenue, what we try to do is we try and break that down, just kind of show everybody where that all went. You can see property taxes for this last year were about 33.75% of our total revenue, which is down a little bit from 35.8 from the previous year. State aid and other state revenue accounted for almost 52% of our total budget for last year. And then what is also classified as miscellaneous income, which in real simple terms means if it isn't state aid and it isn't property tax, it's miscellaneous income. That's the other 14%. So we wanted to let's take a little bit of a deeper look at that. The state part of it, the $21.33 million was the actual, the state's portion of the combined district cost, or our state aid for cost per pupil. The other $3.6 million of that is for teacher salary supplement, early childhood intervention, professional development, and our 4-year-old volunteer preschool program. The $2.132 million number directly above that, those are dollars that flow directly to the AEA, the local area education agency. Those dollars pass through our school district onto the AEA. And every school district across the state is required to contribute to their local area education agency, and it all ties to student enrollment. And then the last number, there's the $7 million number again. That's that other. So let's look at that other, and we'll kind of break that down a little bit. You can see the $3.23 million amount. That is basically open enrollment tuition in, special education tuition in, textbook receipts, other miscellaneous revenues that we would have for, locally for different events. Could be the city contributes part of the money to operate the swimming pools is a classic example of that. So that's local dollars. The River Hills amounts to $1.881 million. That's a tuition number that flows through there. Again, you'll notice that that was 3.59 the previous year. Next year that'll be a 0 because we're transitioning all that over to Fund 94. The $248,000 is state revenue. Believe it or not, there is some state revenue that is classified as other miscellaneous income. And then the $2 million number, that's federal. Those are federal dollars. All the dollars flow through the Department of Education, but they are federal programs, federal dollars. And you can see as we can go through this, these are all the different federal grants that the school district received this last year. You can see in the first row here, not a whole lot of changes. The PEP grant, of course, is the big one. This is our second PEP grant for those new board members. We've been fortunate enough to have a physical education and grant. This is our second one, and that's done an awful lot for the PE program throughout the school district. And fiscal 16 is the last year of that grant. And then the other major grant is our Title I grant, and that's used for reading for our 4 Title I designated elementary schools. You can see that there was a bit of a dip in funds we received from the federal government for that, and we ended up the year about $100,000 less in federal dollars than we did the previous year. So if you kind of look at the whole thing as a piece of a pie, this is sort of how it breaks down. Property tax was 33.6%. Other local, the tuitions and all the other things that I talked about, it's about 10%. State dollars, 52%, and the federal right at 4%. So that's sort of, you look at our pie, that's how it broke down this last year.
So, Doug, I know you're going to go into expend. So the reduction in property tax income, is that primary for it went from 19.2 to 17.6 million? Is that primarily caused by the commercial real estate rollback?
There's a number of factors associated with that. That would be part of it because we do get some state dollars that offset that. It would also be the fact that the district has been working very hard to reduce its property tax asking to the community. We haven't been asking for cash reserve levy as much as we have in the past. We've been drawing down our management levy. We keep talking about that, so we ask for less dollars for that, although for fiscal 16 we did ask for a small increase in those dollars. So it's a multiple combination of things that have driven that down a little bit. The other thing is we did not ask for a lot of property taxes because we didn't have a situation where we had as significant of a special ed deficit in fiscal 15 that we did in fiscal 14, and we didn't have an enrollment increase bounce as big in fiscal 15 as we did in fiscal 14. And then when those sorts of things happen, the school board can petition to the SBRC for additional on-time funding. Actually, what it is on-time allowable growth. And then you worry about how you're going to, and you have to ask the local community to pick up the cash to back that authority up later. So it's a whole host of different things. It's not just any one answer to that.
Okay, but just from property tax, so our overall burden on the taxpayer reduced from 14 to 15.
That'd be correct.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do with this graph here is to try and show you where our dollars go. It's hard to separate out in great detail, but you can see that basically roughly 69% of our expenditures are directly towards instruction. And then you can see all the other different guidance, health services, support media, and you can see the list and where all the dollars go over the course of the year. This is a better way to look at it for fiscal 15. showing where our dollars all went. Again, by the time you take instruction, guidance, health services, media, technology assessment, and you throw the flow through in there, that's about 80% of our entire budget. The other part of the special ed, the certified annual report is the special ed supplement. And we'll talk about that just a little bit. You can see what special ed, what its definition is, and basically any student that is enrolled in the special education program has to have an individual education program developed for that student. Without that, you can't count them as a special needs student with special needs, and you can't ask for additional funding for that. And again, the philosophy in this school district and across the state is students are general education students first, who also happen to have an IEP. And so that means that they qualify for special program services. And when you talk about that, the general ed part of that in our vernacular is called GPE, or general program expense. And then the rest of it is supplemental assistance. All students received the $6,373 cost per pupil for last year. Doesn't make any difference unless they were in the four-year-old program. All students received the same 1.0 funding, and then based on their needs, those students with special needs are weighted. And you can see if they're a level 1 or a resource student, it's about another $4,488. Level 2, $7,700, and the most severe needed students are at the level 3, or the additional $17,400 in each range. And then these are the costs that we can legally charge for a student that has special needs, and you can see it's teachers, paras, staff development, training, adaptations, special devices, and those sorts of things that a student may need. Specialized supplies and equipment, that the key on the word specialized there. A classic example of that would be classroom at one of our elementary schools, or one of our schools in period. They need devices like what Pam's got, a laptop. Well, her laptop wouldn't qualify as a special education expense because it's a piece of equipment. But if that laptop had a special piece of software on it, or if it had a special device on it for a child that was physically or mentally handicapped, so that that child could use that in their educational program, then that device would qualify as a legitimate special ed expense. So, and then also health services are available, but as long as there's an individual health plan associated with the individual educational plan. And so, and then you can see specialized transportation. Again, the IEP has to approve that first before we can do that. And relatively recently and new for us is administrative cost. And because we are in the consortium with River Hills, that operates River Hills schools, we can apply for our share of the pie for salary and benefit, salary costs for the administrator that runs that school. Now, this is where I made my one mistake tonight. I forgot to bring my Rubik's Cube. But working special ed is sort of like working a Rubik's Cube. There's 6 sides to it. There's 9 squares on each side, and you can see all the different components that go into that as we try and sift through and figure out our costs and everything and operations of the program. So, let's get started here. We had 528 students that were Cedar Falls resident students that were served within the 9 buildings of the school district this last year. We had 40 students from other school districts or agencies that came to us. Now, they could have come to us through open enrollment, or they could have been placed at our school district because the IEP team felt that our school district had the best program that would help that individual child. And you'll note that some kids who counted more than once. Depends upon if they moved. You'll see we had 3 kids that were at 2 different schools this last year, and 1 student jumped levels. So every time that happens, in essence, you count them twice.
So that 40 is actually in our buildings, not River Hill.
These 528 are in our buildings. These 40 were open and rolled out or tuitioned out. Okay.
There are resident
There are
students
kids,
served
but they're
someplace else.
someplace else.
Okay.
Yep.
It would be the best way to describe.
Okay. Gotcha.
Some of them are open and rolled out, but the majority of them are placed. And a classic example at Waverly, that Brentwood is in Waverly. Although that'll be changing because there's a consortium developing for that program as well. We had 91 students that we served that weren't Cedar Falls resident students. Okay, again, some of those are open and rolled in, but some of them are not. Cedar Falls would have had the best, in the determination of the IEP team, would have had the best program for that particular student. They would be sent to us. So, if you look at this, we had a total of 659 kids that we served at least one day during the school year, this last year. You can see level 1 kids, we were up 15, level 2 we were down 3, and level 3 were up 4. So those two were pretty steady, but the level 1 kids were up a little bit. But on count day, this is what we were counted for. So we have 528 there. And then we had 40 out, and you can see the breakdown. We had 19 of our students that were tuitioned out were level 3 kids. And I would venture to say the majority of the 16 that were tuitioned out were probably level 1, although I don't know that for certain, but that would be my guess. There's the count date. I apologize for that. So this is on October of a year ago. This was the number of students that we had on certified enrollment day that were weighted. We had 286 level 1s, 158 level 2s, and 66 3s. So when you break this down, you start to really get into this in detail. You'll see that we had 286 level 1 kids. It generated the equivalent of 205 FTE extra for the extra weighting. But notice how many we actually served. It's considerable more. Now you have to understand, funding's always a year behind. So last year's funding actually was on the count date in the previous year. So we're always running behind.
So when we're sitting here next year, the red line will be 349?
I don't know what this red line will be yet because count date, we don't have, they have,
okay.
It was October 1st, but the final numbers I won't know till later this week.
But whatever that number is will be there next year.
Right. So whatever the count date is here, that'll be over here. If it's up, down, whatever. This is what we actually served. Now, some of those kids could have transitioned out. Some of those kids could have transitioned into level 1 for a period of time and then transitioned back out. Okay.
And strangely, there's 2 different count days. Actually, there's a certified enrollment count day, then there's also students with special needs count day. And that's coming up here in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, and in level 2, you can see that it's been pretty steady, about a difference of 10 this year, but historically it's always been pretty steady. And then you can see our funding for that actually tipped up a little bit for last year than it was the previous year. And then in level 3, again, relatively steady, but our funding dipped quite a bit because it runs behind. So that's how it works. With level 3, the one thing I would caution the board is you'll look at that and you'll say 5 kids isn't that big of a deal. Well, some of those kids could have some pretty severe needs, and so what might not look like a big deal in level 3 kind of becomes a big deal. It sort of depends upon the student and their individual needs. So if you kind of throw this all together in a lump, we had a total of, we were funded at 510, and that generated 574 FTE. There you can see the breakdown is where the dollars came. That's 3.14 million for level 1, the 2.2 for level 2, and then the 1.56 for level 3. Basically, we were flat in total funding for special needs kids for fiscal 15 over fiscal 14. Now, we'll just talk about River Hills for a minute. Here's the school districts that are in the River Hills Consortium. That 106 students does not include Cedar Falls. So those are the number of kids that were enrolled in that program. And then you can see real quickly what their enrollment's been the last 3 years since we've taken over. So let's look at totals here. Total revenue was $10.9 million. Now that is down from the 12.6, but remember, there's only half a year worth of River Hills in there because we're transitioning out. This is the more accurate picture. Let's take that out of the equation. Let's show it without that. So you can see basically our revenue was flat. We went from 9,011,000 to 9,031,000. So we basically were flat in revenue. Total expenditures, you can see 12.5 2 years ago versus 11, almost 11.7 last year, but that includes River Hills. So if we carve River Hills out of that, our expenses went up. So we were flat on revenue, but our expenses went up. There's again the difference. You can see where the dollars are, revenue and expenditures, and then River Hills is at the bottom. So unfortunately, what this means is we ran a special ed deficit of $675,685 for last school year in special ed. So, and it would have actually been worse if it hadn't been for this number, because you take this number and you apply it against the 675. So we're 700 and roughly 770,000 negative.
And how do we cover that deficit?
We'll get to that.
Oh, I was giving you a segue.
I've been there before too, Chad.
So we dived in just a little bit deeper to try and figure out what's going on here with all of this, and you can see our expenditures and revenue. Level 1 seems to be the area that the district may have to take a look at. Our revenue has been basically flat over the last 3 years, but our expenses have grown quite a bit. Part of that is because of how the state has directed school districts across the state to expense certain things. Unless a student is specifically tagged with an IEP for a specific program, and the paras are probably the best example of this. We now code all of our paras as what I would call a general special education para. And then at the end of the year, the Department of Ed then, when we upload our data, averages it all out. So, and it's in one way of looking at it is saying if you had 100 kids and you had 70, 20, and 10, they say 70% of the expenses would be level 1, 20% would be level 2, and 10% would be level 3. That's sort of how they average it. That has skewed this a little bit, but that's not the total answer to the question. Because before that time, we were much more tight about how we coded them, and we specifically coded people to whether they were either level 1, level 2, level 3. Well, that changed here. Through here, we were doing it that way, but it changed here. Okay. So that's changed. That's impacting it a little bit. There's our level 2. You can see our expenditures have been down, but our revenue has kind of come ahead. And then in level 3, historically we have always run a deficit in that. Last year I think was a little bit of an anomaly. But again, I do think that averaging has a little bit to do with it. Staffing continues as the needs of the kids have continued to increase. The needs of having to have appropriate staff to cover that has increased. And so that's also adding to that. Another factor that added to the deficit was for last school year we had a substantial number of para-educators that were working at 31.5 hours a week. Well, when the district added 10 minutes to the school day, they all tripped up to 32 hours a week and all qualified for benefits. And that was a significant part of the deficit.
And we added the 10 minutes to be in compliance with the state requirement.
That's correct. That's correct. So, thank you.
Doug, would you clarify for maybe some that don't exactly understand the level 1, 2, and 3? I know you've said it's related to the IVP. It's in layman's terms? Is the severity of the special?
Well, I'm
Okay.
going to ask Mrs. Zinn to help
Okay.
me with this,
Okay.
but I would say that a level 1 kids would be basically, most people would know them as your resource room kids.
Individuals, but there's the needs of the student.
Access the regular general curriculum. They may need a functional curriculum and so forth. So it is that level of service and what kind of services they do need.
One of the challenging parts is some of the students do need special devices that can be very expensive. So the weighting of 2.74 is the highest that it can go, but their equipment may cost us more than that.
Thank you.
And then tack on the fact that we need to transport the kids to and from school. And typically most of those students receive, in the common vernacular, door-to-door service. A lot of our kids, when we pick them up on a regular route, we have designated stops. You know, they might have to walk a block or so to get to that. With special needs kids, a lot of students with special needs, students who have a lot of times it'll be door-to-door.
Now, those transportation costs covered?
Yeah, transportation costs are included.
And we do have a few that also need to have a pair on the bus too, which
Yeah.
creates longer hours.
And our transportation costs this last year did almost double from the previous year. Part of that is because we started another early childhood special needs classroom. That was part of it, but that cost has been an area where that's been growing as well.
Oh, yeah. This is just an example. We have a student that has pretty severe health issues, and we do have to provide even a dedicated nurse to that student. So the student actually has a nurse and a paraeducator with them. So the costs are pretty significant. What we've really tried to do is provide the opportunities within our district for our students as much as possible. Rather than sending them earlier, Doug showed, like we have some students going out, we really try to keep them within district if at all possible. And adding the 3-year-old and 4-year-old special ed program has really made a difference too in the district.
And is that something we're required to do by the state? Yes.
Mm-hmm. What's the line between, and help me out with the vernacular, between level 3 and River Hills? Like, is that, am I?
An IEP, it's an IEP team decision. A group sits around that includes the parents, and they sit down and determine whether the needs can be met in our schools or not. Now, we do have some parents that do not want to go to River Hills, so then we do keep the students in our district.
Most of the students at River Hills are 3, right?
Yeah. I think pretty much all of them are right now. We just moved one student who wasn't on alternative assessment to alternative assessments, which moved it to a 3.
Mm-hmm. River Hills is a program placement, so it's more of a choice by that IEP team to say, we'd like that child to attend River Hills because of the program, the offering, some of the other selections of potential curriculum. Other parents through the IEP process might say we prefer to have them in the school setting because there's more inclusion opportunities and maybe connectivity with students that do not have an IEP. Yeah. So it's more just a programmatic choice.
Yeah. No, I can understand both sides of it. I was just thinking about, for example, the special equipment. Well, River Hills, they're probably better equipped on the special needs, but from an interaction standpoint.
And with the equipment, usually what we do is a lot of times the AEA has equipment we can use, and we take the child through a process to determine what is the, how can we best meet the needs of the student. And sometimes it is the equipment we borrowed, then we end up needing to have to purchase it.
Our equipment costs for students with special needs is really very, very low. We just don't have a lot of that. Like you say, we use the AEA a lot and get equipment from them, that sort of thing. But, you can have a level 3 student placed in our school district. They could be placed at River Hills. They could be Waverly at Brentwood as an example. They could be, depending upon whatever the program needs are for the kid. So, kind of wanted to talk here a minute about authority, but Iowa is a pretty unique school district when it comes to how it determines your certified budget and what you do with your remaining funds at the end of the school year. And so this as we go through the next few slides, these hand actually is what it is, and it's one-time dollars is what we have available. State aid is the amount we receive from the state, and that's recurring. Property taxes are the amounts that the Board of Ed, when it does a certified budget process, will levy in the community, and that's a recurring amount. Miscellaneous income can be one-time or reoccurring. Like I said before, you can see there's a lot of variables in that. And our budget authority is the amount the district can legally spend during the fiscal year. You'll hear me talk about that. That maybe is our credit card limit, and that is a reoccurring. But then our unspent budget authority is a one-time, or the amount remaining. Sometimes you'll hear me call that our savings account. I try not to cross the lines, but sometimes I do. Mm-hmm. So some dashboard indicators to give school districts an indication of what their financial health is. We'll kind of go through a couple of these real quick. You can see our total unspent authority dipped from 9.19 to $8.55 million for this last year. And our undesignated, they changed the terminology on me, our unassigned, unrestricted unspent authority dropped from 7.54 to 7.07. I can't keep this GASB stuff straight. They keep changing the terminology every 2 years on it. So you can see those are actual dollars. So we have $8.55 million worth of unspent authority at the end of last school year. But of that, we really only have 7.07 because the difference is designated. It would be like leftover teacher salary supplement money, or leftover +2 money, or leftover professional development money, or any categorical that we would have that would be given to us, categorically funded money. We have to restrict that because it can only be spent for certain things. That's why. So now we look at this and we convert it to percentages, and so you can see that we've crescendoed and we're starting to slide a little bit down the hill. Our overall unspent authority ratio is 13.88%. Our unassigned unrestricted is 11.48. Now we are going downhill, but we're not in a bad place, I guess would be the best way to describe it, because the district has a goal of this number here being 10%, and you can see we're above that. So we're still in a good place. IASB says that should be about 5% in the event that we need it. Our financial solvency ratio, which is basically taking your committed, assigned, and unassigned, dividing it by your total revenue, minus AEA money. We dipped from 13.6 to 12.59. Again, our goal is 10%. IASB's goal is 5%, so you can see that we're well above our designated goals, but we did kind of slip over the hill a little bit for this last year.
On our bond solvency covenants, I assume
that would have nothing. That would be a minor player in all of this.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now we'll kind of run through the other funds here real quick, and again, just a quick reminder what total assets means and what fund balance means. Activity fund, we had total assets of $580,000, and then net fund balance of $568,000. Fairly steady. You can see revenues and expenditures very, very close for last year. In the management fund, that's been coming down, but again, we've talked about that over and over. That's a planned drawdown. You can see total assets and fund balance almost identical. And there you can see the revenue and expenditures, a little bit more expenditures than revenue, but that was planned for. The District Support Trust, those are those two small scholarship that we have. Total assets, we have a dip in the fund balance this year because we have a payable out. That's why. Normally that wouldn't be the case, but it happened this last year. Statewide 1-cent sales tax, you can see our total assets, our fund balance, but then our actual available is the $5.6 million. because of the restricted amount that goes into the reserve account. There's the revenue and expenditures in that fund over the last few years. This number here, this year, and this year, this was the year of the $20 million bond sale, and this was the year of the $10 million bond sale, so that's why you see those peaks and valleys in there. And the construction projects, as those have been traveling along, in essence, we're done with construction projects for right at the moment, until the board makes some decisions on how, our community makes decisions on how it moves forward. In the PEPL levy, total assets or payables that we had outstanding for the construction projects that we had going on. And you can see the actual revenue and expenditures for that. It's fairly normal. We'll have 1 year that'll be a little less, 1 year it'll be a little bit higher. Just sort of depends upon how the construction projects are going and how that all ties out. Debt service is zeros, and that's the way it's supposed to be. We put in and we take out exactly what we put in. So that's how that works with that. There you can see the revenues and expenditures. It's kind of amazing. They matched. They're supposed to. A permanent fund, this is the Christensen Fund. Just a point of reference with that, you'll notice at one time we had almost 1.56 million, and that's whittled all the way down to about 1.43. Again, that was interest that had been built up over time, and as the interest rates have been fairly weak the last 5 years, we've been working off the interest a little bit. We have not touched the principal. And our proprietary funds, here's the Enterprise Nutrition Fund, and you can see that the fund balance and the total assets slipped just a little bit while revenue and expenditures increased. The revenue and expenditures almost tied out this year, which was a positive thing to see because we have been consistently running a little bit of a deficit in that fund year after year for about the last 4 years now. That was encouraging to see that, and the things that we're trying to do on that end to help improve some of that, hopefully we'll bring that around. Internal Service Fund, the district doesn't use that anymore, so we'll kind of skip over that one. There is the Private Purpose Trust Fund. We have, again, a small payable in that for last year. And here's the agency funds, and almost all of this is River Hills Consortium, and that will sort of become the standard now as all those dollars are going to flow through that fund. Okay. Treasurer's report, this sort of shows you revenue and expenditures total. We took in 67.25, spent 68.35. And you can see the breakdown by fund as to where the dollars came in and went out. And then this graph kind of gives you a history of where we're at. We were very, very close. Revenue and expenditures was, for last year. Before I get done, I do need to thank those three ladies in my team in the office. They're the ones that do all the work. Unfortunately, I tried to bribe them to come up here and give this report to you, but they refuse, and so they must think I do a better job. But they're the team, my team that puts everything together, and without them, it just wouldn't work as smoothly as it possibly does. And with that, I would entertain any questions that the board might have.
I have one question that might be, I don't know if Doug, it's your question or if it's Andy's question. You said that for an IEP student, if we seem to meet their needs better than their resident district, they can be placed with us. If we would close open enrollment, does that have any, how does that impact?
Not open enrollment, it's actually tuitioned in, and we actually just had to do that within the last couple of weeks. We had a local district that did not have the program for that student within their district. They inquired with us to say we would like to be able to have that child attend our school due to their IEP and their needs and the program of what we have in our school district, but we had to say no, we don't have room for that. So that's been done and continues to be done, and that was an elementary student in this case, but certainly if we have room and we have the program, we want to be able to try to serve them, but if we don't have room, we can't.
Okay.
So, yeah. Going back to your question, Jeff, it was answered, but it was kind of quick. Special ed deficit actually is something that goes back into the following year's budget. So in April, you will see that as a board member, to use that special ed deficit or have that special ed deficit come back as a local property tax to be able to offset the cost of special education. And that is done, that's the only time that's done in Iowa Code, because they know they don't fund special education for the full cost of special education. So when you overrun those or you spend more than you take in, you bill that back, and that's a billable expense.
Thank you.
And as our delegate assembly, that's usually one of our priorities that we discuss. So.
The intent back in the 70s was it would be fully funded. It is not.
Yeah. Just to kind of along that, as far as we get credit, so kind of going off of the open enrollment question, so we get credit in our general fund from the state for every student that it comes into our district, but the state doesn't give us credit per se for the SAVE, so for the option tax monies, and they don't give and then obviously if the student is residing in the district, then we're not getting their PEPAL dollars from their.
That'd be correct.
So on those two, so there's a financial impact of the, we get all the dollars into the that come in as a result of them being in our district for the for PEPAL.
That'd be correct.
Okay. The first time that is occurring is with the Teacher Leadership and Compensation Program that we have applied for and will have received for next year. And those dollars actually follow the students from the resident district. And that is $308 per student this year. Next year it will be $311 per student. That'll follow those children.
But I think it would be interesting sometime just to know what that, so we all know what that number is. I don't know as if it's a really big number, but just to have an estimate of kind of what those dollars from a SAVE standpoint and from a PEPAL standpoint.
Any other questions? Hearing none.
I move that the Board of Directors approve the 2014-2015 Certified Annual Report, 2014-2015 Certified Annual Report Special Education Supplement, and submit a request to the School Budget Review Committee to seek allowable growth and supplemental aid for the negative special education balance as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Thank you, Susie. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks.
Okay, the superintendent has a goal update.
Yes, similar process is recommended as what we did with the Board of Education goal update underneath item K. Within the packet are the prior year's, last year's superintendent goal sheets. They list the different goal items that I was working on as well as through the district. The thought would be we have a committee of potentially 3 board members that will work in the interim and bring back to the board some of those drafted superintendent goals. Some of the items that I know that I'm thinking about is the continuation and focus on our CAPS program and getting that up and going. I know we've talked about some dashboarding and making sure that we have some dashboards and active dashboards with some key indicators that we're working on right now and hope to be able to have up and going certainly before the end of the year, that will showcase some of our key areas of I guess, indication of where we're moving as a district and our achievement as a district. So those are some ideas, but we have the subcommittee get together and bring back the recommendations to the full board at the next meeting.
Okay. I'll start at the other end. Any volunteers to be on that committee? And
does it meet?
The next couple of weeks.
Yes. In the next couple of weeks?
You should be on that committee.
I will volunteer.
Board president.
Any of you others that didn't step forward on the other.
And like I said, Jim, I'm happy to serve in either one, so if someone else, if they have a preference, if they'd rather serve on the board goals, then it doesn't matter to me either way.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Susie.
You have to be on it.
I do, yeah.
There's 2. Do you want anybody else to have a drive
you
to be on there?
You probably want to be on it.
do those. Facility discussion, and Dr.
Several
notebook in front of us.
Yeah. Number one, there is a notebook in front of everybody at the board table. For audition that was at the table, for anybody that would like to follow along or see some information that's being presented. This is really kind of a compilation of some data, some information, some resources based on a lot of the discussion that we've had as a board and at the board table. As we know, we need to start making some decisions for facility purposes as we move forward with some of our needs. Certified enrollment, we're up 144 students from last year to this year, which continues to put a crunch on our facilities and our classrooms and spaces. That is an ongoing challenge, so we need to be aware of that. This discussion and conversation with facilities really is now centered on some of the readiness with our facilities. So before we move through the packet, together is just a packet to start the discussion. No decisions tonight. This is an opportunity to ask questions about the packet. Come back next meeting to finalize our thoughts as we move forward, and then to hopefully kind of come to a consensus and decision so we can decide what our next facility plans will look like, because we know we need to make those decisions. So underneath tab number 1 is just an overview document. And that overview document, and I'll just highlight a few things for you, talks about what our current grade configuration is. And this sheet bullets, bullet number 1, there is no definitive answer on the most effective grade configuration. There is no research that shows one grade configuration academically is the right grade configuration. The sub-bullet underneath that first darkened bullet, what we have seen, though, is sixth graders typically have stronger academic growth when at an elementary setting. That has been shown through several different studies. That's what we have, but that seems to be socially, academically, and emotionally. And underneath research on research that shows that there is one perfect grade alignment, grade configuration. Then I want to go down to the last bullet underneath that subtopic. Most studies focus on the impact of transitions through your educational system. Factors to consider, nothing there to highlight, but certainly something to read through. It just goes through some of those items that we really need to consider as we look at alignment and the facility needs that we have, and make sure that our continued focus is on student achievement. What are we doing to ensure that we have excellence in everything we do for student learning, student growth, student achievement? Questions to explore. I put down a few questions that I think are important for us to consider as we walk through this process to make sure that we always keep at the forefront. The first bullet, first question, will student achievement, student learning outcomes increase with a different grade alignment? Will those go up as we look towards differing our grade alignment or grade structures? I think question number 3, the third bullet, very important. If we look at a 9-12 structure, can we accept timelines potentially to move to a 9-12 grade structure? Because that would take community approval. We cannot currently move 400 to 450 students into our current high school. If that takes years to accomplish, are we willing to accept some of those challenges associated with that? And then I think one of the last bullets that's not listed here certainly is with the last bond, 4%. We need to make sure that we consider that as well. And I think we had a speaker that gave public comment last meeting. Factor that into some of these discussions with grade alignment, because if you change gears again, that could cause confusion. I didn't add that as a bullet, but I know that individual did when he was here speaking. The next couple pages in here is the data collected in 2013, shared with the board in July of 2013, so a little over 2 years ago. And this is from administrators, counselors, as well as 9th grade and 10th grade students. The advantages and disadvantages. Alignment seems to work well, and focuses on that academic rigor and expectations that we have. If you turn to the second page, the 9th grade students, and again, some of them were 10th grade students in English 10 as well, and Mrs. Flaherty's classes at the high school and or junior high. really focused on the current grade structure, and that the majority of those students supported that, as well as the fact that they had some concerns about ninth graders being ready for that large of a high school building.
And
So, please.
real quick on each of this is just Cedar Falls students and Cedar Falls staff.
Correct.
So, we're talking to people who are already in you know what you know.
This grade alignment, correct. Yep, yep. The next component is kind of. So the second tab focuses on just where we are at for student achievement. You can see the darkened areas in elementary, or excuse me, in reading. There's 6 increase in the increase from the state. What we have seen, talking with other districts and working grade, their achievements go down during those transition years. However, when we look at those transition years that we do have in 7th grade and in 10th grade, we don't see some of those dips to our grade alignment. Math, very similar. If you turn the page, and this is the sheet that's in kind of a bluish, dark blue. 6th grade and 9th grade, there's transition years, traditional transition years in several districts across the state. We have a wider achievement gap where our students actually continue to increase, where some of those across the state will decrease. Then actually in the transition years that we have, you do not see some of those dips that you see in other districts during those transition years. When we talk to people, what a lot of people equate that back to, and we don't have the scientific data to back this up, but a lot of it goes back to maturity levels of students. And those dips do not occur, at least in Cedar Falls. Interestingly enough, they don't occur in some of the other 10, 12 communities that we've talked to, or I've talked to with in Aurora, in Johnston. I've also spoken with the Waukee superintendent, and they don't see some of those dips and those transition years that they have as well. Kind of the same scenario and the same pattern. So that's our achievement data, and it's interesting to look at some of those components. Tab 3, we could spend the whole night on tab 3, and we won't, but we could, because I think it's very intriguing and very telling. This is 9th grade course offerings. So we've talked a lot about how do we make sure that we are offering what we should offer or can offer as a wide scope of curriculum for our 9th graders, because that's one of the concerns. How this is set up, you can see the top about the grade span 7 through 9, number of class periods 7, then it lists the curriculum areas, English, math, science, social studies, and those courses underneath that. So the first several schools are actually 10-12 schools. So Cedar Falls is a 10-12 high school. We have a grade span of 7 through 9. So we're focusing on those grade spans where 9th grade is at. Schools. But you can see they have 2 8-9 buildings, Northview and Southview. When you compare us to Ankeny, Waukee, which is a 10-12 high school, they have an 8-9 Prairie View and Timberline. West Des Moines is a 10-12 high school. They have a 9th grade center. And if you turn the page, College Community has a 9th grade center. It's called Prairie Point 9th Grade Academy. They are with our 9th grade course. Algebra 2. You can see, Waukee offers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 course offerings in math. But we're very comparable with those other districts that have 10, 12 high schools. Where we see that we're buildings. So as you go down on the second sheet, you'll see Waterloo East and West, 9-12 high schools. Cedar City, 9-12. Lamar's 9-12, and actually on the back page, we put in just a regional district, which is Waverly Shell Rock, 9-12, in each of those content areas. I think one of the things that we need to review and look at is how do we either A, expand additional course offerings for 9th graders, or course and content areas for 9th graders to widen some of those elective opportunities for students. Again, this is to let you digest over the course of the next couple of weeks. Certainly entertain any questions, though.
Are we taking it for granted that offering more courses for ninth graders is good?
Great question, and most students and parents would say yes, that's good. Sometimes when you speak with educators, that's a concern. Of, I guess, content focus and direction, because sometimes you can get sporadic and not necessarily take the courses of the sequence that you should be taking.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Yes. Yeah. If all of a sudden you have 15 art classes that are open to ninth graders, all of a sudden down to 2 offerings, and that actually could hurt you. So if you offer 6 electives, you actually might be able to have more courses offered because students sign up for them, and you have much more breadth of course offerings. So sometimes an inch deep is not as good as...
I'm more thinking of the dilemma of a junior English teacher who has a class of people, all of whom have taken different courses as freshmen, and then you don't have that common...
That's another challenge.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm coming about it from a scheduling standpoint, where it's a challenge if you don't have enough students to sign up because you offer so much, and then you have to pare down.
Do we know, we have certain things at the 7th grade level and 8th grade level that are required, Dan. Do you know, do the other schools have a similar kind of structure?
Yeah, most if you look at this data, the ones that are in boldface in each one of those are probably their course for that, such as a math class. You may look at Algebra 1 as kids at that grade level. Okay, so it's either a required course for that students take.
In most 7th or 8th grade programs typically have some kind of an exploratory or elective course offerings that are required from district to district.
I mean, like we have I'll call it fine arts, I guess, for better.
Now remember, this is just looking at 9th grade.
Yeah. Okay, this is only
9th grade.
Yeah. With regards to what other schools are requiring and offering at the 7th and 8th grade level. That's not a part of this.
Okay, this is strictly 9th and up.
Just 9th grade.
Just 9th.
Yep, it includes 7th, 8th, and 9th as a reference that's just the grade span in that building. Okay, so if you look at the first page, Ankeny Northview is an 8-9 building.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tab number 4, just as an FYI, is the 28th largest schools in the state of Iowa, school districts, and this comes from the Department of Education. And it shows the dropout rates in Iowa. Luckily, we are 3rd over that 3-year average, 3-year span. And so is the other 2 districts that have the best low. Again, not sure of the qualitative analysis. We've not done anything with the statistical significance, but we think that 9th grade readiness, that's a key indicator in the state of Iowa. Number of 9th graders on track to complete, number of credits for graduation, and if you have a high rate of 9th graders on time to graduate, and in a lot of 10-12 districts, those 9th graders typically come readiness. Graduation rates, the next page, largest high schools in the state, 3-year average. Once again, we are 3rd. You can see they changed the order. Actually, Johnston dropped down, West Des Moines crept up, but you can see the 3-year averages for the 3 largest school districts in the state for their graduation rates actually are all 10-12 as well, and we're 97.44 over 3-year average, which is pretty positive.
Just for comparison, where are we as far as numbers, the largest districts? We are number...
Tab number 5.
I wanted to compare it to this one, so I wanted to know about, where are we?
Great says what's behind 6.
Great lead-in. So tab number 5 actually then lists where we're at. This is just total population of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Not grade span yet. We are the 18th largest high school now. This is by student numbers 9 through 12 in the state of Iowa. We're actually the 17th largest school district in the state of Iowa, but when you look at our population, 9th through 12th grade, we're 18th in the state. So if you turn the page then, you will see this lists all of the they have in their building 9, 10, 11, 12. We are actually 33rd largest high school by student population because we're at 10, 12. I think that's a good thing. You usually with the smaller population, you can build better relationships. You can typically attract students better. You can usually make sure that you are really focusing on student needs, and certainly we have wonderful staff that does that regardless. But you can which of those are the 9-12 buildings, which of those are the 10-12 buildings, and interestingly, kind of a different situation in acceleration and why. And you can see that also at College Community and Prairie. So we are 18th by student 9-12 population, 33rd in size because we're a 10-12 building, but we're the 17 numbers. Being up 144 certified students from last year to this year, that will change and will probably somehow increase, would be my guess.
And is Johnston on board for another high school?
No, Johnston right now is building. Waukee, though, is talking about, because they are approaching, if you look at Waukee on that sheet, they are down probably 12 or 13. They have 1524 student population. They're a 10-12 building. They have said probably by 2021 or 2022 they will have a second high school because they do not want to go above 2,000 students in a high school. When you look at Ankeny and the two Ankeny high schools, they are both around 1,000 students, I believe. Yep. One of them right now has 954. It's about fifth from the bottom. The Centennial High School is 1,028, and it's about 10th from the bottom. Those are both 10-12 buildings, and they split when they started to approach 2,000 students in their high school because they said that was too large. So that's why they went with a two high school approach. Comes from the state of Iowa. It's required to collect this information as suspension data. These are just the one high school districts that are the largest. So we excluded, say, Waterloo, Des Moines, Dubuque, just because they have multiple high schools and it's a little bit more difficult to track. Interest lower than and last in the state with our removal types for suspensions. Maturity, you start looking at where some of the 10-12s fall. They are usually lower. There is one College Community that's a little bit higher, fourth from the top. But also I think some of it's tied to the size of the building.
Does that count when we send the adjustment center, or is this when they go?
Could be an in-school suspension or it could be an out-of-school suspension.
Similar to us. I mean, some of them I think are very different demographically, but maybe
they
that's
are.
just a few of them.
Yeah, when you start, and again, it's usually who we benchmark against when we start looking at student achievement. So we benchmark against Waukee, Ankeny, Johnston, so Ankeny and I believe Johnston are going to have less students on free and reduced lunch than we do, percentage-wise. Socioeconomically, we're going to be higher than all three of them. Tab number 7, interesting tab. One of the things that I've heard, and I think we discussed that could be a cost saving measure if we look at 9th graders potentially in a year comparison. We actually have now not quite twice as many 8th graders taking 10th level classes. You can see this is just one grade level ahead acceleration. 8th graders went from 81 in 2012-13 now to 107. 9th graders went from. We look at tab number 3 with our courses offered. We're offering many, many more advanced honors courses or the junior high level, so those students don't necessarily have to travel. But I think also we're having a lot more 8th graders that are ahead in their curriculum, ahead in their skills, and we certainly want to make sure that we challenge them so they're taking those classes that are going to be much more rigorous in nature for them. survey results that we sent. Again, this is going to be for you to peruse, but just to highlight a few things within these surveys. First survey in here is staff, and classroom teachers that took it. We had skipped or they're blank because they're
There's parent
zeros.
and student with 0 parents and 100% students.
Oh, they must be in different order. Sorry, mine was the one that was copied from, so
There is a survey and staff one in here.
my fault.
We'll find it.
Further back.
There should be 4 different stapled copies in there. So,
We're done.
okay.
So which one you want to do first?
Let's do the Cedar Falls Grade Alignment Survey staff. I apologize. Mine was the one copied from, and it wasn't. We didn't put it back in the right order. So, that again, 203 classroom teachers, building administrators 18. As we move forward, and let's go to page number 2. A lot of different questions about readiness, academically prepared, socially prepared, prepared entering grade levels. The logic in the survey, not all people, depends on what age you see some different answers at different locations based on the number of respondents. And you're also going to see some that are just completely skipped, which I'll show you in a bit. What's positive, though, you're going to see most everything skewed to the bottom, which means that people either strongly agree or agree that children are ready, children are socially prepared, children are having some leadership opportunities, which is very positive. If you move to the 4th page, and down at the bottom it shows 4 of 9. This is the bottom question. 4 of 9 down at the bottom, and it shows the current grade configuration for Cedar Falls schools is pre-K, 6th grade elementary, 7, 9 junior high, 10, 12 high school. Do you believe this grade configuration is best for the students of Cedar Falls? With our staff, 52.26 said yes, no said 47.74, which was the lowest of all the survey results, which I thought was really interesting. If you go then to, say, page number, let's go to page 6 of 9. And this is where you'll see the administrators' responses. And again, everything is skewed heavily to the bottom with strongly agree or agree as we look at academically prepared, socially prepared leadership opportunities. And then you go to page 8 of 9 where the same question is asked, grade configuration. Do you believe this grade configuration is best for the students of Cedar Falls, which is right towards the bottom? 94.44% said yes. And then you can kind of see some of the other questions at your leisure as well.
So this was administrators, and the previous one?
Yep, the 18 is administrators, the 2 or 3 were staff, teachers. Okay, now, not knowing the order, I'm going to go to the next stapled one that says on top, graduates, Cedar Falls Graduate Survey. Skinny one, yes. This was sent out to last year's graduating class. We did not have the contacts for every one of them, but it was sent out to the majority of our last year's graduating senior class. We had 50 seniors or graduates that completed the survey, as you can see on the first one. As you look down the survey, which is, again, positive, most of them are skewed towards the bottom, which is a positive outcome. So that's strongly agree or agree with those questions. If you look at page 3 of 4, once again, same question. Do you believe this grade configuration is best for the students in Cedar Falls? 68% of our graduates said yes, 32% said no. So from the sampling of our graduates, we were pleased to have 50 of them respond, which was really good. And again, you can see what those results were with their opinions.
Out of roughly, Andy, 50 out of 300?
340, I believe, is what we had. And I think we were able to send out emails for about 300 of them, I believe.
I think that's right.
So, yeah. Okay, now we're going to go to the grade alignment survey, and this will be students. And you'll see the student is 692 on on the first question.
Yeah, it
total
says
number.
parent and student.
It does say
Yeah.
parent and student,
Yeah.
and there's two of them that say parent and student, because we had to, we put those together with different logic so they could go out.
So which one are we doing first?
Student, 692 is the first.
The first one that was in our packet.
Yeah.
That one.
So, first clarification point I want to give you. This up on top says A. We actually had to duplicate this survey, so we had a survey A and a survey B. Nobody received B, nobody took B. We did that, though, in case there was a family, since this went out and only one survey could be completed per device. If the only device they had in their home was, say, the student Chromebook, and the parent called us and said, I can't take the survey, my student already took it, we had another duplicate survey to send out. That way they could take that on that same device. So don't be worried about A. There is a B, but there's nobody that took the B because we had to send out B to specific families, and nobody requested that, which means most families have multiple devices, and it did work on smartphones as well. So as you can see, 692 students responded. This was 6th through 12th grade students. Obviously, there is different logic in this survey, so you'll see the answers on page number 1 are 0 because this was oldest child, so that was a parent question. So any place where you see no answers, that meant it was a parent question, not a student question, in the survey logic and skip. So you will start seeing some of the data for students actually on page number 6 of 12. And I'm going to highlight the bottom question on number 6 of 12. And this was questions specifically for 6th graders. And it says, I believe I'm having greater academic success in the school of 6th grade and elementary. Again, the only thing that they know, interestingly enough, 80% of them said yes, which I thought was very interesting. As you start looking at the other answers on pages 7, you'll start seeing strongly agree or agree. Very few in the strongly disagree or disagree area as you go through the academically prepared or socially prepared or leadership opportunities or involved in activities, which is nice to see. What I'm going to, again, draw your attention to is on page 11 of 12, which is, do you believe this grade configuration works for the students of Cedar Falls? Of our students, the 692 that took them, you will see that 68.38% said yes, this grade alignment does seem to work for the students of Cedar Falls.
Will we get to see the stuff that they wrote?
It is huge, and it's so. If you want to, you can certainly have it. It's when you start going for 4 different surveys we didn't limit the amount of characters. I mean, it's just pages of pages of pages of stuff. So the other survey result is then the parents. Interestingly enough, I think a lot of people know, and I put this in the board update, we had a denial of service attack last week. Basically what happens is they throw about 12 to 15 gigs of data at you, somebody from the outside, and for a 1 gig pipeline that takes over the entire system and shuts you down for a while. When we sent out the parent survey, we did that through Infinite Campus. We had a small number of surveys that not go out. We appreciate people notifying us of that. So we could tell which ones didn't go out through Infinite Campus and actually stopped because of the denial of service attack. We were able to send those out then to people, and we actually had another, I want to say about 70 to 75 people that filled out the survey from that, which was very positive.
Do you know if all of those went through, Andy? I mean, because I just heard from some people today who had just started hearing about this and still did not receive it.
They did, yeah. We can check to see if they went out, and they did. Some people have like 4 or 5 emails listed in our system. We only send it out to the email first listed because we always ask people to continue to update those, especially at the secondary level. So if they use their 3rd email listed in Infinite Campus, it probably didn't go to their 3rd email. If they use that as their active email, we need to make sure we work with them to move that up to that primary email address. But yes, they all went out. We have some that are wrong email addresses. We can actually see which ones those are. And which helps us because then we can contact those people and find out why they bounced back and why they didn't go through. You can see the number of parents, 787 that responded, which again is a positive response rate. Going down through the list, again, a lot of skewing to the bottom of the strongly agree when you look at different academic successes, readiness, different involvement with activities, which is extremely positive once again. Once we get down to, and I'm just going to steer you to page 11 of 12 once again, and this goes back to the current grade configuration. Do you believe this grade configuration works for the students in Cedar Falls? For the parents, 700 and some, yes, 67.32%, no, 32.68. So, which is, again, positive response rates with the number of people that responded. So, a lot of data there, a lot of information there. If you look then at tab number 9, it's just some different research. One of these I know we had sent out as well, which was the Lit Review from Stillwater Public Schools. There's a couple other research articles in here, but again, most of the research articles do not show that grade alignment makes a difference academically. It depends on what your local community believes in, and certainly the expectations and the work that you have going on each and every day within the classroom. A lot of data here. I think the data kind of reinforces the decision from 2013 that the board made. We have to continue to look at this. I think hopefully with the timeliness, we need to make some decisions as a board. We have really the next 2 dates where we can look at a new bond election is February 2nd is the next date that we can actually put a bond on the ballot or a question on the ballot. And we know there is some timeliness to this just due to the fact that we are full. You know, there are some people, and I'm going to deviate now from this document. We do have 2 empty classrooms at Hanson still, and some people say that means you have 50 open seats there. Right now, we're about 3 kids away from having both those classrooms occupied because of the sizes of the sections in 5th grade and 6th grade. If we have a couple kids move in, those classrooms will be occupied and those classrooms will be split, and we will hire teachers because we're that close and have that many kids in those sections right now. So yes, we have empty rooms because we knew we were going to grow, but those rooms will be full with just a few more kids added into those sections, and that's a challenge. And
in 4th grade, I think we're sitting at 27 kids in a classroom, and in 5th grade, 27 and 28.
Yep. So, again, a lot of data, a lot of information. The hope would be that next board meeting we can continue to dialogue, discuss this, and then start to look at a conclusion so we can start moving forward and be able to move forward with a bond ballot question that can be communicated, worked on, and then certainly work to have support from our community. And I think really important to reinforce that the last bond question had 57.4, 57.5% support, about 17 percentage points increase from the previous bond ballot, and I think that's important to note.
Okay. A lot of information.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Please, go ahead.
Is it possible to get those free-flowing responses in a digital format so we can peruse through those if we so choose? Or, I mean, how best can we?
I think so. I'd have to work on that to see how I can download them, but I think
however best, I mean.
It'd probably be downloadable into a spreadsheet is probably what it'll be. So, yes, let me work on that. Okay. Might not be tomorrow, but hopefully by Wednesday.
So, a lot of work, and thank you for all the staff and putting together the survey. I think one of the fundamental questions in my mind still is the premise behind why we're considering changing the grade alignment, and that is, and I know this is still an open discussion point, but is, and I know, Andy, I've heard you say that building a 4-grade high school is more expensive than building a 3-grade high school. Yeah, I get it. You've got more children, more kids in the school, so you need, and there's also the factor that you need more square foot per kid at a high school level. The fundamental question that I think still needs to be addressed is from a district-wide, from a capacity, from an enrollment projection standpoint.
Yep.
If we have a 4-grade high school, yes, it costs more to build the 4-grade high school, but we relieve pressure throughout the system, and so do we free ourselves up some capacity at the elementary level and marry that up and say, marry up the projections with what we could do at an elementary level and a high school level, and say from a district-wide standpoint we could save more money if we went to a 4-grade high school. And I think if we could definitively answer that question, that it would, for example, if it came out, definitely it was way more expensive to move to a 4-grade high school than on a full district, then it would help answer this question. So I don't, and I know that's a broad question, but
it's not actually, and it can be answered. And I think through the work that's been done the last couple of years, that's been a question that has been answered. The answer is yes, it would be more expensive.
For a full district-wide, because
right.
You're moving 500 students out of the elementary level.
About 450, correct. But the challenge is, because you need to, and again, you kind of answered it, when you look at that capacity challenge, and again, you have to look about 5 years out, because that's how long it takes to be able to construct and build a building. With our enrollment projections, moving those 500 students out, or 450 students out of the elementary, and that's building a new elementary, the square foot needed for elementary kids, and again, we can do the math together, we're projecting is about 200 this day and age. So now this is above and beyond what the elementary building would cost. So you take 215 minus 135. That's the extra square foot, and that's not replacing the elementary, that's on top of the elementary. So this is saying you build that space in a 912 building, and you don't build that space as an elementary building. So the 215 minus 135 comes out to 80 square feet per child. You take that times the 450 children that would be moved out of the elementary building into the high school building, times roughly the cost to build a building, regardless of what it is, elementary or high school, and that's about, right now the average cost to build are anywhere in that 240 range to 250 range, and that's with land development and roadways and parking lots and fixture, furniture, and equipment and the technology components that you want to have in there. If you just look at the construction cost, it's about 200. With everything, it's roughly about 240 to 250. If you do that math, it comes out to about $7.5 million to $9 million more than just an elementary building. So best. To me, the most important question isn't cost, and that's really important, but the most important question is academics. What are we doing for academic excellence to support our kids? Efficiency and cost-wise, it's going to be about $7.5 to $9 million more to do a 912 building. Academically, we, in about 12 years, if we did that, would have a high school of probably 2,000 students. Other districts are splitting at 2,000 students. Do we want to make a plan now, knowing it's a 12-year plan, to probably split and have 2 high schools in that time frame, which I don't think we want to do.
Yeah, and I'm all for academic performance, but correct me if I'm wrong, but
please.
The number one indicator for success is parent involvement, and parents are really concerned about their kids' education, and two, that we have great staff and we have great programs. So, and I just don't want to, and so I think we've got that regardless of how we configure our buildings, because we've got great parents, we've got great staff, we got great programs.
Yeah, and I think that's a simplistic answer because there are multiple other factors. When you look at the statistical significance, yes, number one and number two, parent involvement as well as the staff, and agreed, we have tremendous parent involvement and staff. There's no doubt. But when you start looking at those other factors, and again, I believe, I've drawn a blank on who did those studies, but class sizes, building sizes, cultural expectation, the climate of the building, all major factors, and that's why a lot of those districts, and Ankeny I think is a great indicator, 2,000 students is a lot of students, especially when you start looking at a high school building, and having that culture and climate and expectation of excellence for all kids, it's very easy to fall through the cracks, so you need to be cognizant of that.
So you're saying we need the new elementary, the expansion of Orchard, and the remodel at North Cedar, even if we had a 9 to 12 high school?
If we are, what I'm saying, and the conversation we had about cost, is if you replace the elementary, and the new elementary is taken off the table, to replace it with a 9-12 building, because that's the 450 kids that you are building a new elementary for capacity's sake, and you're just building space for them in a high school instead of in an elementary building. That's another $7.5 to $9 million without adding capacity to our district. What you're doing is you're just building that space in a 9-12 high school. So you moved your 6th graders into a high school. It's about $7.5 to $9 million more. Rough numbers.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. What were those footprints you were mentioning again per child?
About 135 per student at the elementary level, about 215 at the high school level. I think averages across the region are 225 at the high school level.
And a couple of questions along that line, Andy. So we factored in, you said the average is roughly 225. We're going down to 215.
We're at 215 roughly with that high level schematic that we're working on.
I mean, are we figuring in the benefits we've been talking about for quite a while, where a lot of our high school kids are off campus? Hawkeye, UNI, especially touting the fact where the new high school will be built. Is that factored into dropping down from what would be typical to, 10 less square footage per?
Not many kids are off campus for Hawkeye. Those are taught on campus. So
okay.
Right now, and I believe we have roughly about 100 students based on that last presentation that we gave that are post-secondary education students that are at the campus at UNI throughout the day periodically.
Okay, we're not there all day.
Yeah, usually for a period.
Right.
So I think long term that's something that we have to gauge, because you hope with the CAPS programs and other programs we're going to have students that are going to be more engaged, more hands-on with some activities outside of the school. That's one of the reasons why Waukee is building a CAPS building for that Center for Advanced Professional Study, because they need to relieve some of the pressure off their high school. The question is, ultimately, you are going to have room where if we do go 9-12, 12 years from now, we'll probably be very close to 2,000 students at 9 through 12. 15 to 20 years down the road, where will we be at? You hope we continue to grow. I think our projections will indicate as a community, and certainly a regional hub, which you hope we can continue. I think long term, if we are looking at a 30 to 50 year plan, you just have to be cognizant of that.
I would agree. I'd want to make sure, it's like they say if you leave LA to New York, if you're off by 1 degree taking off, you're going to end up in South America, just because it's long term. And so if we have these numbers, 215, now all of a sudden you take it times 100 kids and 1,000 kids and whatever the number is, that we're not skewing it at this minimal level to affect the bigger plans that we've got.
These are just the current students we have. So if you look at the current number...
Not the kids, I'm talking about the square footage.
Oh, square footage.
It's not a good analogy. It's an exponential thing versus a linear thing. If it's not 215 and it's 213, that's not going to make us miss New York.
Well, but is it making us miss the mark by, instead of 9 million, maybe it's 3 million?
It won't be that large. It'll be maybe 9 million down to 7.9 million.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to, I think the question was, financially, does this make more sense? And it doesn't. With the people that we've worked with, if you look at a 9-12 structure, it's going to be more money initially and long term, because if we go 9-12, we'll still need, based on our current projections, a new elementary probably in the next 8 years, just because by the time you look at removing 450 students out of the elementary, within 5 to 6 years we're going to be at capacity again. So within another 3 to 4 years we're going to need something done, which is going to be another elementary structure, another elementary building. So I mean, this isn't easy work. It's really heavy, and weighty work, and that's why I tried to put some of this information together to try to help frame some of those conversations, and really to go back to those first few questions on page number 1. I tried to use those as some of those guiding questions. Number 1, will our student achievement and student learning outcomes increase with the different grade alignment? I think that is, and I understand what Jeff was saying, but I think that has to be our priority. Will it improve us as a system and the benefit directly to our students? Number 2, can we support, in our community, support a grade alignment, grade realignment, and a larger bond for potentially a 9-12 high school? Can we accept the timelines to accomplish a 9-12 structure and the fact it may take several years and have residual consequences on our elementary buildings? If this takes 5 years to pass, it's 5 years of our elementaries being severely over capacity. What does that mean for us as a system? What does that mean for those kids in those classrooms? What does it mean for our staff in those classrooms? I think that's important questions to ask. And then finally, how large of a school is too large? I think that's an important question. What is that threshold? What do we believe as a district and as a board is too large for a high school? And I want to continue to go back. You know, the last bond, 57.4%. 57.4%. And if we come back potentially with a third bond, with a third ballot question, with a third time, I think that could do. I think by the person that spoke, that can be very confusing. Please.
Will this be available on the web at some point?
Yeah,
this
sometime.
is really a good document. It would be a shame not to have it disseminated.
Yes, that's why we certainly made copies tonight too for everybody, and we'll try to PDF it. I hope our copier can PDF that. It's a big document. So.
I would just like to maybe make an amendment to the first guiding question you have there. Sure. I think these are good guiding questions, and I'm not. I think we're putting a lot on a different grade alignment by asking it to increase. I mean, I think your question is, will it negatively impact more so than? I mean, if the bar is that we'll only change it if new grade alignment will increase student achievement. If it has no effect on student achievement, then it makes it a little different of a question. Does that make any sense? I mean, if it's going to negatively impact, I think that matters. But I'm saying, you know, if we can change it and it won't have any impact on student achievement, then that question is kind of gone.
Well, the question I would ask, though, is if it has no impact, why do it? If it's going to cost more...
Well, I mean, it would be then a facility question versus an academic question.
Right.
So, I mean, then you can go to that next question, but...
Well, and I think that kind of goes into the factors to consider, because one of the things that we'd have to weigh in would be some of those other components up on top then with the factors. And one of the ones I think we just have to be cognizant about, with our current structure, we have hired staff to really teach specific grade levels. Big impact, not necessarily, but there will be an impact that if you do change grade alignment and it does not have an academic impact, we might have some people that aren't eligible, aren't licensed to teach in a new grade alignment component. And that would be something that you have to weigh in as a board. How many? Haven't done that research yet, haven't seen the need to do that, but that will be something that you have to weigh out as well. So if there's not an academic impact, do you want to have the cultural and emotional impact of walking through potential reductions if people aren't licensed with no educational impact from changing?
Wait, I'm not understanding something. You just lost me. So is it possible? Are you saying it is possible then for someone to be able to teach 9th grade at the junior high, but because of licensing stuff, they're not eligible to teach 9th grade at the high school?
No.
Does it go by type of school or by grade level?
It goes to 6th grade and 7th grade typically, with middle school endorsements and licensure spans. Now, there are some people that are licensed that are K-8, some of them that are K-6, some of them that are cattywampus, that if you have the 6th grade at a junior high, or at the elementary, you can teach those grade spans. If it's at the junior high, you have to go back, either get endorsed to be able to teach that, or you can't teach.
Okay, thank you.
So,
I think also to answer your question, Jenny, will it have a negative impact? We can't predict that without changing. That's why you try to look at other school districts. Where are they at, and what's their structure? Can you get a sense of how is their student achievement in the grade alignment that they have? And that's one of the things I think we've seen from other districts in our state, especially the ones we want to compare to, those schools that have a grade span of 10 through 12 are the higher achieving schools.
So basically, by what you just said, we really can't answer this question until we do it. I mean, you wouldn't know if you'd increase it either until you did it.
Well, I think you'd have to say, can we guarantee that it's going to have a positive impact if we change, or can we guarantee it's going to have a negative impact?
And the answer would be until you don't know until.
I don't know. But I think you go by some of those other indicators that are out there, and one of those indicators is the size of a high school. If we know 200 is that threshold where districts and high achieving districts have talked about in the state of Iowa, we're splitting because 2,000 students is too large. Ankeny, Waukee.
I think the rest of them were a good question. I wasn't disputing that.
I know.
I was
No,
just
it's a
kind of
good
disputing
question.
the first question. I think it's setting the bar. I mean, it's. I don't like that question. I guess the way it's worded. So I think there's just a better way to word it and
I understand.
still get to what your point is. And I'm not disputing what the outcome of that is. But
No, I understand completely. So
I know we wouldn't have this information right now. Have there been any schools in Iowa that have gone from 10-12 to 9-12?
Or vice versa?
Or vice versa?
yes. Obviously, that's happened over time. Recently, I'm not certain. I'd have to go back and look. College Community recently went through some changes, but that's been about 7 or 8 years ago, I believe. Now I'm going from memory. And I think they did that because they were growing so rapidly that they needed more room, and they moved from a 9-12 to a 10-12 and moved their ninth graders into a ninth grade center. And eventually, I think it still is a ninth grade center. But that was just due to massive and quick enrollment growth out of necessity. I think on the flip side, over time, what's happened is a lot of schools that were 10-12s, due to high schools that were built, enrollment that was higher 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago, then they moved down to 9-12 buildings. Now some of them are 8-12 buildings. Some of them now are 6-12 buildings because of that enrollment law. So it really depends on the community. And again, there's no one grade alignment that is right. It's based on
Cedar Falls School District used to be 9-12.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
1959, all our predecessors made the decision that because of capacity issues, we should be a 3-grade high school instead of a 4-grade high school.
There we go. Yeah.
I think we need to make sure that we also pay attention to what the survey said too. I mean, we as a board asked you to send that information out, and we are representatives of the people who responded to that, so we need to pay attention to that as well.
Super majority by majority of the respondents, which is, I think, important to note. So, yep. I agree.
Andy, just as a quick question, as a board member, if we're trying to make these plans for the long-term benefit of the district, and no one has their crystal ball out. So, how reliable are the numbers that we have received the last 5 or 6 years in relation to here's what you're going to see your growth to be? And from what I understand, they're pretty not on.
They're on.
But so, are they also saying, okay, in 20 years it's going to be? We also have a crystal ball for that as well, or is there something else as part?
They went out for 10 years with us. They really say 5 years is where they're very, very confident, and they'll be within that 5% range within that 5 years. When we've tracked it over the course of the last now 5 or 6 years, they're within, I think, 1 or 1.5%.
They've always hit within the statistical margin of error.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this year, when we were looking at the projections, I think they projected about 110. We're at 130.
Right.
Excuse me, 144. So actually, they are at their upper end of projections, because remember, they do upper, middle, and low. And we've always kind of taken that moderate band. But holy cow, if they start hitting their upper church, it's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all for.
Thank you for doing the
Yes.
survey.
Yeah, thank you.
Because I do think, people really did want to share, and I think what will be interesting in the comments is maybe if there are themes there of some areas that we can maybe become more rigorous or improve our offerings. I mean, I think that would be a very valuable thing that could come out of it regardless of how we end up.
It's always valuable to listen and read the comments, and always.
So thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
And for the fine print of those that helped put together this information.
Holy cow. Yeah, it's people sitting here on this table.
Thank you,
so
thank you.
That's why I want it shared. I want everybody who wants to look at this to have it. Okay, so this is off agenda. I move chocolate.
Second.
It goes around, and then we should give it to everybody else there.
Okay, superintendent report.
A couple different items. Just a reminder that the Iowa Association of School Boards State Convention, November 18th through the 20th. We certainly encourage everybody to attend. I did not write this down, but there is a new board orientation in Olwine on October 5th, 21st, 21 coming up. So certainly encourage. Let us know.
I think we're signed up.
Great, and we'll get everybody lined up for that.
Communicate on
I
when
think,
we're
are
going to
they
meet you.
also offering that at the convention?
They are at the convention. They do that during the day when we're also doing a lot of the Budget 101. So I think if we can get it taken care of ahead of time, that's usually more beneficial, especially with the Budget 101 down there. They do a very nice job with that.
And do you have down for the state meeting the 18th through the 20th? Is
Yes.
it really the 3-day?
No, the 20th is actually a new President's Day. Some other meetings.
I thought that was in February.
Well, there is a meeting in February, but they do some different meetings on the 20th. It's actually the 18th and 19th. The 18th is kind of the delegate assembly. It's some of the new board meetings. The actual conference is on the 19th, and there are some residual meetings on the 20th.
And then we will go typically down the night before?
Yes.
On the 17th, or do we?
Depends. I'm trying to. We sent out the Google Doc for everybody to put down when you would like to stay.
Most people were just, if I remember right, were the 18th only.
We're just the 18th only.
Okay.
And the 18th is also the night that the UEN has their annual meeting from 5 to 8, and I believe that is going to be in the hotel that we stay at, which includes all of the UEN school board members, superintendents. So certainly encourage you to attend that if possible.
Did we go down the night before last year?
Yeah.
Yep, we did.
And I just put the 18th because everyone else was, so I figured we weren't doing that this year.
But we could
so
go down the night before? Doesn't the delegate assembly start at 9 in the morning?
Do you have us room for 2 nights or 1 night?
I would have to double check with Michelle, but typically we do reserve 2 nights.
That's what I thought. And the delegate assembly starts at 9 in the morning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's
I
do the
think
early
so.
birds, I think.
Or some of the other birds might actually start at 8.
I could certainly go on the 17th. I just didn't think people were.
Yeah, I would too. I would too.
We'll clarify that and send an email.
It's nice that we get together for a dinner.
That
if we
would be
can.
the 17th, usually the night before.
And just for the new board members, just as a reminder, this as we go down, there's the open meetings laws. This is for the purpose of learning. This is a state meeting for board members. When we go down there, we go down there to learn, and it's not obviously to conduct business or talk about business, but this is one of those areas that open. We don't have to start a meeting, we don't have to close a meeting, because again, there's the assumption that we will all be there in the can across the state of Iowa. October 26th information report, AYP, and we'll have that's annual yearly progress with our trajectories and our achievement for students. We also have an update with just a Robinson Dresser. Remember 2 meetings ago we had a community member that asked and gave some items of suggestions for Robinson Dresser, which is our baseball softball complex, for board update, just information for fencing and some other items out there as well. So hopefully very soon there'll be some work completed.
Great.
Can you just keep us posted as that happens? That'd be great.
Yes, I was going to go out there this afternoon. I just didn't get a chance to. So it's probably ongoing, or maybe even started right now. And this is just kind of a reminder, just for the board. And I think we said this at the time. This process started last fall, so it actually started in 2014 to do some of this work out there. The scope of the work doesn't rise to the level of approval by the board. But we ran into issues with stormwater runoff and working with the city. When you put concrete in a location like this, there's different challenges with making sure that you meet all the requirements. So just great timing for our community member to come and talk with the board, but this was being worked on for now almost 10 or 11 months, I wanted to say. So just as an FYI.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions from the board member?
No, we'll be in the new guy as far as, I don't know for information reports. Obviously, tonight's been a pretty full meeting, so I wouldn't suggest it, but I guess I'd be interested sometime to hear about the character counts and Leader in Me programs. I've heard really good things about both of those. And
I think that'll come hopefully through our board goals too. As Jenny talked about, that's one of our goals. We didn't really cover that a lot last year, but I think that's something that we'll cover in our board goals to look at both of them. So.
Okay.
Good.
So,
Any
Jeff,
other-
so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So you're requesting that we have an information report
Yeah,
on
just
them.
to learn what's going on in the school. So I'm not. Nope.
I'm hearing you correctly then. Okay,
Yes.
good.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we will move into closed session if you can so direct us.
I move the Cedar Falls Board of Education enter into closed session to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price of governmental body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price of governmental body would receive for that property. The minutes and the audio recording of a session closed under this paragraph shall be available for public examination when the transaction discussed is completed under 2011 Iowa Code 21.5 1J.
Thank you, Susan. Your second?